Furiosa, a Mad Max tale, is a stunning flop worldwide, a fact which has made some very salty. But it should have come as no surprise, as its failure was entirely predictable to all but those who greenlit it. How can that be, you wonder? Let's find out. This video is sponsored by Galaxy Lamps. Domestically, Furiosa opened opposite Garfield, and their respective box office takes were within striking distance of each other. But since Garfield only came in at a fraction of the cost of making Furiosa, Furiosa is the undisputed loser in that matchup, as the Mad Max spin-off needed to open to twice of what it did in order to have a chance of breaking even. The numbers are as bad or worse internationally, so Warner can start preparing for that write-off on the losses they're gonna incur on this one right away. There is something noteworthy about those numbers though. See, this isn't a case of the audience going to see the movie and then deciding that they didn't like what they saw and then opt out of seeing it a second time and tell their friends and family to stay out of it too. That would have indicated bad word of mouth. And don't get me wrong, the movie might still get that and fall off a cliff next weekend. But that's not what happened here, or not yet at any rate. No, these kind of numbers, where a movie with this kind of budget couldn't even crack 30 million over its regular 3-day weekend, indicates that the majority of the moviegoing audience flat out rejected it unseen. To put it into context, adjusted for price hikes and inflation, half or more of those who saw Mad Max Fury Road 9 years ago decided not to bother with Furiosa. That's what happened here and what we need to focus on. The majority of the audience rejected it unseen. Why would they do that? We're about to find out. But first, have you ever wanted a personal night sky in your room? Well, you should, and the Galaxy Projector, the sponsor of this video, can help you out with that. Today, most of the night sky is blotted out by light pollution, especially if you live in or near a city. But this state of affairs represents but the blink of an eye in the breadth of human history. Since the dawn of time, our ancestors were gazing at the stars and the planets, and doing so remains as fascinating and soothing as ever. If you've been thinking of adding a little something special and intrinsically appealing to your space, then the Galaxy Projector will provide exactly the kind of lighting you need. It will bring space and the nighttime sky into any room, giving it a truly unique look and timeless feel. But in being a smart device, it also brings the best of the modern world. First off, its RGB colors, brightness, rotation speed, on and off timers, and many more features are all fully customizable. With the app, you can make it truly yours from your mobile. Do you like the simplicity of Amazon's Alexa or the Google Assistant? Well, the Galaxy Projector also offers that hands-free magic, obeying your word to switch on or to change mode, and more. It is also energy efficient, so you can enjoy your personal Galaxy without your electricity bill skyrocketing. In short, if you appreciate modern tech with a timeless appeal, the Galaxy Projector is for you. And naturally, we have a deal for you. If you head down to the link in the description and type in our code MidnightsEdge when ordering, you get 15% off. So head on over to that link and order yours now. And with that, let's get back to the topic at hand and look at the reasons why Furiosa was flat out rejected by the majority of moviegoers who simply didn't bother showing up for it. Let's begin with the least controversial explanation, namely that they simply waited too long. Furiosa was introduced in Mad Max Fury Road, which came out a whopping 9 years ago. That's longer than the time gap between Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, and for comparison, the entire original Mad Max trilogy was made inside of just 6 years. Unlike the original Mad Max trilogy though, Fury Road hasn't accrued a fan base of its own. Case in point, today there is arguably more demand to see Mel Gibson return as Old Man Mad Max than there is for Tom Hardy to return for a Fury Road sequel. Still, there was a brief moment there when there possibly was momentum for another movie in the Fury Road universe, when the movie still had a presence in the zeitgeist, and director George Miller did indeed want to do a spin-off movie since day one, and Warner were open to the idea as well. What held it up for years though was George Miller suing Warner because he felt it unjust that they withheld a bonus from him since Fury Road went over budget. And on top of that, it underperformed. That legal skirmish held up development of any more Mad Max movies for years, and by the time the dust had settled and bruised egos had mended, the moment had simply vanished. The public zeitgeist had long since moved on, yet that's when Warner, in their wisdom, decided to go ahead and greenlight Furiosa. Who did that, and what may have motivated it, we'll get back to. But even if there had been no legal skirmish, even if Warner had greenlit Furiosa right away, and George Miller had made it within 3 years of Fury Road, it still might not have performed all that well. Sometimes Hollywood gets this idea of that they can do a spin-off movie or even series based on a side character in a franchise where the main character is the main draw holding everything else together. For instance, how many Batman spin-off series have there been over the years that didn't feature Batman? And what kind of mark did any of them leave on culture? Because neither Gotham, Batwoman, nor Pennyworth, the origin of Batman's butler, set the world on fire, let's say. And yes, that last one actually is a real thing. Joker did great, of course, but that is a slightly different story. In the case of Mad Max though, Mad Max himself is the brand. There is nothing else to latch onto, and timing aside, it could very well be that making a Mad Max movie without Mad Max would never have worked. Case in point, way back in 1984, they tried making a Superman movie without Superman in the guise of Supergirl, which didn't work out too well. A more apropos example as pertains to Mad Max may be Ben Affleck's Daredevil. While it never got a sequel, it did get a spin-off in the guise of Elektra, which was a monumental flop. Even if we flip genders, the precedent for spin-off movies featuring side characters isn't a great one. Case in point, Snow White and the Huntsman did okay upon release in 2012, but the spin-off centered on just the Huntsman, even if it had both Chris Hemsworth and Charlize Theron and no Kristen Stewart, was a major flop. Similarly, it could very well be that Furiosa was never going to work no matter when it was released, or how much momentum was left over from Fury Road. Take Mad Max out of the equation, and there simply might not be enough interest in the world he inhabits to sustain any standalone features based on anyone or anything else in it. I mean, his world is hardly the Marvel Universe, is it? And it isn't Gotham either. But there is another possible reason why this movie flopped, which the Hollywood trades are tiptoeing around, doing their best not to mention, and which has the online punditry seething with rage at moviegoers everywhere for failing to support Furiosa, which they were expected to do for, the cause. If there is one thing the movie-going audience seemingly has had enough of the past few years, it is girl bosses being shoved down their throats, and based on the poster and trailer alone. Furiosa on the surface looks like more of that. And more often than not, whether or not any individual moviegoer decides to go see any individual movie is based on that surface appearance. Marketing, after all, in a sense, is all about making that surface as shiny as possible. For the better part of a decade now, certainly from Paul Feig's 2016 Ghostbusters remake onwards, moviegoers have been force-fed the message that men are useless dolts, and women will outman any man in masculine badassery. Of course, 2016 is only when it became overt. As my colleague Tom Connors frequently has pointed out, the male lead was sidelined by a proto-girl boss even in 2015's Mad Max Fury Road. Audiences just weren't so sensitive to it back then, but that may be part of the reason why that movie has left no bigger footprint in pop culture than it has. See that movie again today, and the wokeness in it will be much clearer, and I say that as someone who greatly enjoyed it upon release. The thing is that for years now, nearly every major male-driven franchise that appeals to predominantly male audiences has gotten a female-centric makeover, seemingly in order to bring in more female audiences as well, as the built-in male audience are just assumed to stay put. Kathleen Kennedy herself shared that little tidbit with us. We know that Disney bought Star Wars, and this is true for Marvel as well, because they lacked properties that appealed to male audiences. And that's when Kathleen Kennedy suggested to Bob Iger that all the boys would stay put if they made it female-led, and then the ladies would flock to it as well.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
Turns out she was wrong on both counts. Too bad all of Hollywood followed her lead, including Warner's Ann Sarnoff. You know, the one who wanted to permanently replace Batman and Superman on film with Supergirl from The Flash and Batgirl from the cancelled Batgirl, before David Zaslav came in and shit-canned her. But before that, rather than insisting that George Miller proceed with one of the two other Mad Max movies actually featuring Mad Max that George Miller has been writing for several years now, she was the one who greenlit Furiosa, despite having data suggesting that doing so might not have been the hottest ideas even at the time. We now have several years worth of data which all tell the same story. From the Charlie's Angels remake to Star Wars to the Marvels to Madam Web, it is always and without exception the very female audience that Hollywood is so desperately trying to reach that let these movies down. They are the ones staying away in droves. Oh, male audiences are checking out as well, of course, but the bulk of those who actually do show up are still male audiences. That is what happens whenever the audience detects a girl boss in a movie, and deservedly or undeservedly, Furiosa looks like one of those. That is not an attack on female-led movies in general, mind you, but rather a commentary on green-lighting executives that are completely out of touch and out of sync with the movie-going audience, male and female. If they were a little bit more attuned, they would have known that female audiences never asked for male-driven franchises to be made female-centric. Case in point, if the dirt, grime, brutality, and hopelessness of Mad Max didn't appeal to the majority of the female audience before, then merely swapping him out with a chick that loses her arm no less isn't likely to change that. Then it doesn't help that the reviews are good. It doesn't help that the movie was expensive to make, or that George Miller has been wanting to make it since before the release of Fury Road. The movie came out too late, after it had lost that Fury Road momentum. And even if it hadn't, it might never have worked anyway, since such spin-off movies hardly ever do. And finally, and perhaps most damningly, it looks like a girl boss movie in an age where the audience have soundly rejected them. Furiosa was as such always doomed to fail. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to look at the stars, and you can get them into your own room with the Galaxy projector. Get a unique, modern and timeless look for your space, and if you head down to the link in the description and type in our code Midnight'sEdge, you get 15% off.